Feel the grip of the oar handle, smooth yet firm in your hands. Taste the salt of your own sweat and the occasional splash of water. It's all part of the journey. Welcome to another episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Each week, our host, Masters rowing coach Rebecca Caro, dives deep into the world of Masters rowing. Whether you're on the water or in the gym, join us to become a faster master. Let's go rowing.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to Faster Masters Rowing Radio. I'm Rebecca Caro, and I'm delighted to be joined today for my first time by Grant Craze. Grant, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So, Grant is perhaps not known to many of you, but he is the person who works with me to write the training programs for the Faster Masters customers who work with us month by month in their training. And Grant and I went together to watch the Olympic regatta in Paris recently. And it was obviously an extremely exciting regatta on so many levels. And despite the great fun that we had watching the racing, one of the things we discussed afterwards was, what are the things that masters and athletes who are never going to be Olympians can learn from watching elite racing? So we've got three things that we wanted to go through and to try and draw some ideas, some thoughts that you might be able to take into your own rowing practice as a result of what we watched at the Olympic regatta. And the first one is doing the basics well. So, Grant, what did you mean when you said they all do the basics well?
What I have observed is that when you go to a regatta like the Olympics, you see crews from different countries all in the one place together. And if you watch, say, for instance, the Germans rowing, they row a what you might say a different style, or they have a different emphasis in the stroke to, say, an Italian crew or an Australian crew. So you can almost, without them wearing their national colours, after a while, recognise which country they would be from. So there's that style difference, but the commonality is that they all do the basics extremely well. And what I mean by that is, like, their blade parallels will be accurate. Their height off the water will be the same. They'll square up in time. They'll be putting their blades in the water, spot on time. For the most part, obviously, you could pull things to bits with the high definition video these days, but just to the naked eye, you can see these crews are very consistent with those basics, and seemingly whether they're rating low, if you stay around after the regatta, the crews will go out training, and you can watch them train on the course, where they'll be generally rating low, and see what sort of exercises they do, what drills they do. And the overriding factor for me was they always looked unhurried with their movements. And to look unhurried, you have to be accurate with your movements to create time. And that was, I think, the outcome of executing the basics to a high level.
So the thing that I take from that is that basically everyone can do that. Any athlete listening today can learn to be very precise in those points that you mentioned. So I see that as a really positive thing. It doesn't matter that you're not going to be strong enough to be an Olympian. We can all improve how we do the basics and make sure that our precision is extremely high.
Absolutely.
Now,
yes, if you are at the Olympics or the World Championships, obviously you have, I guess, extreme physical capacities, but you don't need those to be able to execute the basics to a high degree. You just need diligence and practice.
So the second thing that we observed was, we called it a change of pace. And what happened was, in a lot of the races, particularly the finals, the crews that ended up on the medal podium were the ones who had the ability to make their boat go faster quite noticeably. And this change of pace move, perhaps we could call it, enabled them to change positions in the last, say, 10% of the race. And that significantly affected the outcome in quite a few races.
Yes, it certainly is noticeable that what the positions that the crews are in at, say, 1,500 meters gone aren't always the same as what they are at 1,750 meters gone versus 2,000 meters gone. And usually in the last 250, there was quite often position changes, and some were quite dramatic. And some crews had more of an ability to be able to lift and lift again and again, and create additional boat speed, and really just add that sheer pace, which can make a position change in the dying meters of the race.
Is that just fitness that enables that to happen?
I think there's that would be a component of it, but also I think it's something that you would practice. It's something you would mentally have or up your sleeve, or be prepared to do. I don't think it's something you would just make up on the day, in the moment. It would be something you would practice. You could do that in training. You would have that as something. Look, if we're in this position, if we've got to do this, and you would have a call. If you were in a crew boat, to communicate that, okay, now's the time, let's do it, and you would know what how you were going to affect that change.
One of the things that we put into the Faster Masters training programs in recent months is, during a steady workout, so an hour or 45 minutes at, say, 18 or 20 stroke rate, we've injected a change of pace into that workout so that athletes can practice this and get used to what it feels like and how quickly you can change your boat speed. So that's one thing that you can do in your own training, so that you can learn how to make a change of pace happen. And the way we embed it is, you start by teaching it at low rates during a steady workout. You don't start trying to learn that at race pace.
Yeah. Yes, it's something that you definitely should practice and know how you would change rate and change pace. In the situation, I think, where in this case being Olympic finals, they would certainly be desperate to get whatever they could out of themselves, and and be pushing for a peak performance. But in the same way that they would be doing that, we can still prepare ourselves as masters to change your pace. And hopefully, if that is required, and go on.
I was going to say, one of the best illustrations of that was the Romanian women's double scull. In the Romanian women's double sculls event, this crew was doubling up into the 8. And so in their semi-final, in their early heats, and if you've ever watched them race before, they tend to race from the front. They go off hard from the start. They get a boat length in front, sometimes more, and they just sit there. And in their semi-final, they noticeably did not do that. They got to the 1K mark. They were in the pack. They were maybe 3rd or 4th, overlapping easily with the other crews. And it was clear when they came past 1,500 meters that what they'd been told to do was conserve energy, row effectively, efficiently, and then put in a turn of speed so that you win the semi-final, but you only do it by doing this change of pace right at the end of the race. And sure enough, they won the semi-final, not by a huge margin, but they just stepped up and then just, as it were, sliced their way through the field. When it came to the final, they tried to do the same thing again. They went out hard, though. They didn't sit in the pack. But when it came to the final run-in after 1,500 meters, they were second to the New Zealand crew. And they tried to do the change of pace, and it didn't work. And they didn't win. They were very, very close on the line, but they didn't manage to get into the lead, obviously, at the critical part of the event. And so that was a very good illustration in their semi-final of exactly what a change of pace can look like by a really successful crew. But also the fact that I think they were probably tired by the time they got to their final, because they'd done an extra race compared with everyone else, because they'd also had to qualify their 8 into the final.
True. They did have that additional event, and also, I don't know this as a fact, but you could imagine that the New Zealand or crew, or their opposition in general, would try and counter that change of pace by either going, making sure that they kept a margin on them through the middle of the race, and really put them to the sword, as it were, so that they if you have a margin and someone tries to change pace, you have got that buffer where you can respond. And it seemed to me that that's a possibility of what the New Zealand crew did. They were expecting it, they countered it, and they certainly really fought with them in that last 250 meters.
It was really clear in parts of the regatta where people did their pushes, where they tried to do their change of pace. And so if you know that you think your opposition's going to do their change of pace at 1,500 meters or 1,750 meters because you've watched what they did in previous rounds, that's where you can put in your counter. And of course, sprinting to the line, one of the advantages that you could do is to start your sprint before the other crew starts their sprint. Now, of course, you've got to be able to sustain it. You can't fade out, because then you risk, not winning the race. But if you start your change of pace earlier than the other crew, how many strokes does it usually take in your opinion, for these elite crews to actually start to close a gap or to move away from another crew in a change of pace move?
Well, you could probably count 2 or 3 strokes before you got a real response in terms of a margin on another crew. It wouldn't be necessarily instant. I mean, maybe a couple of inches, but if you're talking about trying to gain a meter or so on another crew, so it's a clear margin that when you're racing, okay, I've definitely got my nose in front here. And a meter's pretty tight for a small boat, really, because they that can change quite quickly. You definitely want to, if you could get sort of 5 strokes on someone before they realized that you had actually changed your pace, then and got a small buffer, even if it's a half a canvas, even in the closing stage of a race, if you really started to struggle, they would still have to have matched your change of pace, and they're still a meter or 2 behind, which they have to overcome. So they have to go certainly faster than you, significantly faster than you in the last maybe 50 meters of the race to get past you. So you could lose the race if you went too early, but then if you don't go, or if you leave it too late, then you're not going to be in a winning position until possibly the last stroke or so. I think I know which one which risk I would take. Also, if you've got your nose in front, you can always maybe be somewhat more motivated to retain that. I can just, keep my act together for a few more strokes, just 5 more, versus playing catch up.
Now, the third thing that we observed at the Olympic Regatta was it's not over until you cross the line. And of course, that is a real truism of any race. But building on what we were just talking about with the change of pace, there are an awful lot of things that can happen in that final run-in that really affected some of the results of some of the races. So would you like to pick out one race where you think that this happened, and what it was that happened and what caused it?
Probably the men's pair race. The men's pair, or the British crew was, we were sitting approximately 100 meters from the finish line, and the British crew had certainly with a couple hundred meters to go, there was probably a foot or 2 in it between them and the Sinkovic brothers, the Croatian team. And coming past us 100 meters, they had a good half canvas lead. The British crew had a good half canvas lead. So they really sort of countered the push that the Croatians were doing. And coming up to the line, the British crew caught some water, whether the boat went off balance or what happened. Anyway, but they had a bit of a shipwreck, and that really took the sting out of them. And even though there was literally 2 to 3 strokes left of the race, that was enough for the Sinkovic's to just get by on the last stroke, and the British did hold on for the second, but it was only by less than half a canvas to the Swiss. So it was all very, very close, but It was very, so you just don't know. So you always got to keep going until, you cross the line. And that was, I mean, the gasp from the crowd was quite something. It was definitely unexpected, because they appeared to be having done everything right until it was just one stroke, which unfortunately didn't go their way.
Another example, which was somewhat similar in the men's single sculls, where the leader from Germany, Ollie Zeidler, was out in front, and he'd been chased all the way down the course in second place by the Dutch sculler Van Dorp. And as they came into the run-in, neither of them had the change of pace. The change of pace came from the Belarusian sculler, who was racing as an unaffiliated athlete, and he came streaking through to take a silver medal in a sprint that is it's brilliant. It's a really, really amazing thing that he managed to do. And some of that was definitely him trying to get his boat to go faster. I suspect some of that was also the Dutch sculler trying to sprint, but actually making his boat go a little slower.
Yes. And the other thing was quite interesting was that after the race you found out about the interesting thing about that race was that this men's singles race was after the eights. And maybe you could elaborate on the reason for that, Becky.
Yeah, that's true. So it wasn't the original scheduled last race. The last race was supposed to have been the men's eight. But what had happened was a bus had broken down between traveling from the athletes' village to the rowing course. And obviously they'd managed to get in touch with the race organizers and said, can we delay this race because there are athletes on the bus who are racing and they can't get to the course through no fault of their own. And what it led me to realize was that, oh my goodness, the unexpected really can happen. Earlier in the regatta, there'd been a day when one of the starting boots, which are the cups that hold the bows of the boats before the start, had failed to work. And we saw all the athletes backing out of one lane and then backing into the adjacent lanes. They moved everybody across one lane. So one of the things that is an additional thing that's worth having is a contingency plan. Know what you are going to do if something happens. And in this case, all the other athletes, except for the Belarusian, were obviously at the course and warming up and, planning their race at the scheduled time. Obviously, he was unable to do that because he arrived late. And so all of them had to change their warm-up plans, their getting on the water time plans, and all of those things. And if you can imagine the state of mind that he must have been in, but he probably had a bit of a point to prove. Once he'd got on the water after all of the hassle of being frustrated and sitting in a bus that isn't getting you to where you want to be, he then came through with this incredible sprint.
Yeah, you never. Well, things don't always go to plan. That's for sure. And I think being able to keep your head in those moments, even though that moment that we're talking about could have been possibly more than a moment, maybe an hour or so. I don't know how long the delay was for him, but yeah, keeping your head, adjusting your plans, and then executing your race is really what you need to be able to do. Filter out this isn't right. Wasn't how I was expecting it to go. Like say moving over lanes. It doesn't matter. I'll just move over a lane. Fine, let's go. I'm supposed to be at the course at 12:30, and I'm still stuck on the bus that's broken down. And no problem. You just adjust your timeline, but you still have that same warm up the same mental preparation, same checks on your boat, all those things that you would normally do. That shouldn't change. But the other thing also is, if you're organising a regatta, they also had to do the same thing. So let's say there was a mechanical failure on that lane. They had to change that. They had to change the race program because of that bus breaking down. And so they had to be flexible and pragmatic as well, which was quite interesting. So, all around people had to do that to make the event.
And not allowing yourself to get flapped or flustered by the change is a mind control thing. Knowing what are the things you can that are within your control and what are the things that are outside of your control, and not allowing them to get to you or put you off your pace or divert your focus to worrying about things that you can't affect. Now, that takes a lot of mental training and practice, but it definitely contributed, I believe, to an exceptional performance and a silver medal in this case.
Yeah, well, he was well rewarded for staying in the zone and producing that athletic performance, for sure.
And wasn't it fun? It was a fantastic
That was great.
regatta.
That was great. Yeah, really good regatta. Really good learnings. And is really actually really enjoyable also watching the crews train.
Noticeable how a lot of the things that the crews did in training were things that I recognized that I do. And that gave me a lot of reassurance. It's like, I'm sure there are things that are quite secret about how you prepare for an Olympic regatta. But what was also evident, there was an awful lot that's not secret. It's commonplace. It's what we were talking about at the beginning. It's doing the basics well. And they do the same things that we do.
Yes, we saw them doing drills, the different countries doing drills. There was variations on themes, but basically they were doing, or the drills that we saw were doing the drills that we would normally do. Even after they may have just done their semi-final and the regatta was over, they go out for a row and they're back working on the catch. Not putting a lot of pressure on necessarily, but they're working on the catch, rowing feet out, doing some legs only work. There's also people working on the finish, crews working on the finish. Really probably the overwhelming feeling that, or takeaway, I guess you could say, was from watching them was they were very careful on the recovery. All the crews it appeared as though they were doing nothing on the recovery to disturb the boat. The boat's almost ghosting along in between the strokes.
And of course, that's one of the things you can do to improve your average boat speed is if you slow down less on the recovery. That is a topic for another day. Grant, thank you so much for coming along. Thank you for your insight into Olympic regatta thoughts and how we can take some of these things and make them into things that we can put into practice in our own rowing. To everyone listening, this has been Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Till next time. Bye-bye.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your fellow rowers about the show. If you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.